Hello and welcome. So in this video I'm going to describe to you as best I can the circumstances around the Malmedy Massacre of the 17th of December 1944 during the Battle of the Bulge. Probably one of the best known massacres of the Second World War. It's appeared in a couple of films, best known being the 1965 Battle of the Bulge film. And so here I'm going to do my best to describe it to you, but I do need to point out a couple of things before we go any further. And the first is that I came here thinking that I knew a lot about where I am, and it'd be easy for me to talk about it. And having seen the location, I am now much less sure that I can do so, but I'm going to do my best. Now, here we're talking about the massacre. There were people, 84 enlisted men from B Battery of the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion, which involved also was one military policeman. There were 10 enlisted men from the 575th and 546th ambulance companies. There was 8 men from the 32nd Armoured Reconnaissance Battalion. There were 2 men from the 200th Field Artillery Battalion, 1 NCO from the 23rd Infantry Regiment, and 1 man from the 86th Engineer Battalion involved in this killing. Not all of them were killed, some of them survived. Indeed, there may have been more people involved, and that I think is possibly going to be outside of the scope of what I'm going to do right now. Now, as far as I can see, there are 3 possible explanations of what actually happened here. They are the accounts which were given in court, and they are suggested when there was the Malmedy Massacre trial. Now, for example, the 2 scenarios that were used then. One was that the prisoners had been captured, left in a field under light guard, and they were about to run away. The time the camp group Peiper turned up here, and there was some kind of misunderstanding. German troops opened fire, so it was all an accident. The other argument is that a large number of Americans had been taken prisoner, and they were about to run away, and a German fired a warning shot, and then there was panic, and that led to the Peiper's men opening up with machine guns. And the official version is that they were deliberately murdered. Now, because I'm doing this video, you'll probably be thinking that I'm going to show it was either one of the first 2. Well, if that is what you're thinking, I'll put you out your misery right away. It isn't. The escape theory, even though a large number of men would appear to have escaped, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What I'm going to try and do now is to show you now the route that Peiper took, which I'm using at this very moment. But I do accept that there are problems with the evidence that was given in court. I'll just use one. There was an American Lieutenant, Larry, and there's a photograph of him pointing out one of the men he thought was one of the killers. There was a Georg Flips, and I think in the circumstances, this may have been done for the cameras. I think that he was pointing out, he felt under pressure, had to point somebody out, and he pointed him out. How could he possibly have recognized the one of the people in court. It seems to me to be totally ridiculous. And I mean, often this was used by defense lawyers and things related to the Holocaust cases, where people they may have seen for a few seconds, then many years later they expected them to recognize them. But I mean, can you just imagine being in a situation like that and then be expected to recognize somebody the following day even, and never mind that. So we know that there are many accounts of the what actually happened here. Now, the person normally associated with the killing is one Major Werner Pertschke, and Pertschke himself was born in Belgium in 1914, just before the First World War started, and he went through. Somebody committed Nazi, and he'd served on the Eastern Front, and he was killed in Hungary in 1945, in March of 1945. So the problem at the trials was that it was often said that the confessions that they had been obtained by the use of violence, sort of beating people up and getting them to confess. Now, I do appreciate in circumstances like this, people might confess to doing things, but bearing in mind their confession would lead to a death sentence, and they must have been aware of that. There is another thing I do want to point out as well, is that the Peiper's driver himself said whilst he was in a POW camp in 1945, that it was Peiper himself who gave the order to kill the men, saying something along the lines of, "You know what to do with them," and then the killing actually took place. So the driver's name was Svegard, or Svitgard, I think, something like that. Svigard, something like that. And he made this confession at Ebensee in Austria. Actually, I've also got video from Ebensee in Austria, and he told this to a doctor who worked with the 7th Panzer Company, who was also in the camp, and therefore I think the assumption that the doctor can be believed. Now, let's come back to the massacre itself. I'm going to try my best actually here now to describe it in the circumstances that I've got, and we'll start off here. Actually, there's a sign here, and the reason I'm going to show you the sign is because I want to show you the route that Peiper was taking. So here we can see I've just been walking now from this direction, cars coming, and there we see that it says, I'll come a bit further down, there we have Vem Tirimont, bienvenue, willkommen, welcome. So there you go, and I've got to say, you certainly do feel welcome here. Now Tirimont is a town down this road, and Peiper was been there in 17th December 1944. So what had happened was, when we think of the Ardennes, we think of places like this. It's forested. It possibly isn't as heavily forested, though, as most people seem to think. We've got big open areas. So what you see in the 1965 film, for example, is although it was filmed in Spain, but it's not all that inaccurate. as a film. So anyway, coming down here, we're on the edge of the linguistic barrier here between French and German. Now, the provinces of Eupen and Malmedy, so this is Malmedy province obviously, were transferred from Germany to Belgium as a result of the Treaty of Versailles. But then the provinces themselves were annexed by Nazi Germany. As they annexed those places been in France, for example, or in Poland. Indeed, in Poland they annexed more than what had been part of Germany before 1914. So the Peiper SS unit, they, for political reasons, maybe Hitler above all wanted them to be the ones who'd race on ahead of everybody else, and to a large extent that was true. Peiper wanted the glory being a political unit. Peiper was noted in one of his reports. It was said that he was rash, and he was somebody vainglorious, or words to that effect. I can't quite remember what they were, but something along those effect. Now, the thing was this: on the objective, as outlined by Hitler, in the middle of September note, before the Battle of Arnhem, 1944, Hitler. Somebody mentioned at a conference that the Ardennes, I think Jodl mentioned it, and then Hitler afterwards, he said, yes, that's where it's all going to be happening. Afterwards he had another meeting, and he brought a small group of people around him, and he said he wanted to attack here. Now that is what we've been left with. It was all Hitler's idea. Now Hitler claimed that the idea of 1940 was his, but I don't really think it was. I think it was Manstein who thought of it, and then Hitler sort of latched onto it. Whatever. Thing is, the situation between 1940 and 1945 was quite different. Now I'm going to come back to the situation it existed, because here, before the Battle of the Bulge, because here we're now at a spot where I believe first contact between Peiper and the Americans actually happened. Now we have a new state here. You can see it's quite relatively recently built, but it was along this road where the heavily armed Germans were going in this direction, and the American convoy coming from Malmedy went to the crossroads, it's now a roundabout, and went down the road which was down here. You see that white building there? I think that is one of the buildings on the road. Things you can't see the road from here. So somehow the Germans spotted the Americans first. Maybe they had a light vehicle out front, because you think that all the noise, but then again the noise of the American trucks, maybe they, it was a surprise, they weren't expecting to see them. You can suddenly come across units. You can hear when even I'm here and I've got these heavy plant vehicles passing, that you don't really hear a great deal. And in fact, I stopped speaking. So maybe it was something along those lines, but it was clearly the Germans who saw the Americans down there. So we're looking at a range of what would you have your gun ranged at if you're firing at something of 400 meters, something like that? No, maybe a bit more, 500 meters. Now, most tank-to-tank combat, when it was happened in the Second World War, at roughly 750 meters, more or less. Now, tanks are not designed to kill other tanks as a rule. Tank destroyers, or what kills tanks. Tanks are above all used against infantry. So that's what you force your breakthrough through with tanks. They go racing on ahead. And what we've seen now, for example, in the war in Ukraine, is that the infantry has become stronger than the tank itself. And so, therefore, because of the use of drones and javelins, both of them together. So, but something will happen again. I will predict it mightn't happen in my lifetime, or yours for that matter, but it will. The tank, I think, I'm going to argue, will once more become stronger. That there will be a weapon that is developed that will negate the effect of the drones and these new anti-tank missiles. The idea of the tank goes back a very long way. Armoured warfare was what happened in the Middle Ages, and when it was realised that they could have something could bring down the horses, then stopped using armour in the shape of a suit of armour, but they may have used other things such as to protect themselves with. But likes of bulletproof vests, for example, which did exist during the Second World War, but really restrict your manoeuvre quite considerably. I mean, I've tried using in Ukraine I had armour on my body, but certainly, I mean, it's not the sort of thing you can't really, or maybe I can't anyway. Maybe I'm sure it's much lighter than it was, but it's not very good. Anyway, so having that given, it's not very good for running around in. It's all right if you're getting shot at you in a defensive position. So now we've got this Volvo place down there, and we've got a number here of grand surface, to use the French word. We've got these businesses, out of town businesses, which are here. This road's very loud, and I'm going to have to I'll be stopping and starting and all the rest of it. So anyway, the firefight takes place in these fields, where there were these fields. This house, I don't know if it was there, it wasn't. I mean, it looks new from here, but who knows. On the maps from the time, none of these buildings are here at all. They're all so there would have been a clearer range of fire. Now, bearing in mind also that the Germans had superior weapons. Now, the Americans, being lightly armed, they may have had machine guns on their vehicles, but what they didn't have was cannons of any type. So the like were on the tanks. Now, let's come right the way down here, and so this is the road that Peiper came down. They engaged the Americans there, and by turning around this corner here as well. So it seemed they engaged them there, then they also came down here and sort of met them either in the rear, or they came around in a way outflanking them. Now, the Americans decided to surrender, and it would seem that there were also people that had been captured earlier or captured in this area. So this now is the road which will take us down to the crossroads, which is today a roundabout. Now, to go back to the situation that existed previously. So, the idea of Hitler's, which he announced in September of 1945, was that he wanted to sort of break through and recapture Antwerp. Now, at the time, Antwerp had only just been captured, only a couple of days earlier, and the approaches to Antwerp were still in German hands. Now, Antwerp, if you look at it on a map, you'll note you've got these channels leading in through the Scheldt estuary, and because of that, it couldn't be used for shipping. So supplies were still being brought in across the Channel ports, and therefore the supply situation was really bad for the British and the Americans. So they're bringing stuff in. Now, but once Antwerp was opened up, then that would be the end of the supply problems. None at all. And Antwerp was captured intact as well. They didn't destroy the port facilities there. Indeed, just to the north, or rather to the east of Antwerp, is a place called Bergen op Zoom. And if that had been captured, it would have cut off the remains of the German 15th Army, and thus it's possible that the Arnhem operation would have been a success. Now, one of the failures of the Arnhem operation was the fact that the roads could only carry one vehicle. If one vehicle was knocked out, the front vehicle, and then when the others came off, and then they ended up getting stuck in the mud, and that was in September. And Hitler failed to learn this lesson, because this is exactly the problem that happened during the Battle of the Bulge. Now, during the Battle of the Bulge, temperatures did drop to -20, something called a Russian high, or the word that was then used in the English language. But at the opening days, the temperatures between approximately -1 and 3-4 degrees. There was snow on the ground, but the ground wasn't frozen. And now, concentrating huge numbers of tanks and vehicles on narrow roads, just like the one I've been walked down earlier, that road would probably look the same then. Sometimes 3 abreast. And there's one account of one general whose vehicle came off the road, and I can't remember if it was American or a German, but and then he needed 12 men, quite some time, to actually get it back onto the road because of the mud that was created from these vehicles which were using it. So this is a really important part of the to understand the Battle of the Bulge. Now, there's another thing which happened to Peiper's unit. For some reason, this is now my opinion, it seems it formed up late. It should have been formed up earlier. And not only that, but the infantry which went on ahead, so you used the infantry to knock out the initial fortifications and then permit the tanks to go through to exploit the fast-moving area. They failed to do this. There was a hold-up. The American defense was much stronger than was they thought it would be. So the thing is, by the time that Peiper got here, he should have been here some 18 to 20 hours earlier. Now, this whole plan was they were supposed to get to the Meuse River in 48 hours and then cross the Meuse and head off to Antwerp, cutting off the British 21st Army Group, and then Britain would sue for peace. It's an absolutely absurd idea. But anyway, that's Hitler for you. But then again, I mean, it wasn't his life. Other people were dying for him, so why should he have to worry about it? So here we actually even got a map, the signpost rather. So you've got places there noted from it. Malmedy itself was in American hands for, I think it was the entire battle, actually, because this is on the very northern edge. Saint-Vite, of course, there was a major battle there, and which held up the Germans for some considerable time. The Battle of Saint-Vite, in my opinion, is one of the most important reason why the Battle of the Bulge failed, other than the plan itself. Now here today we've got this Volvo facility here, so there wasn't anything there at the time. Here you are, just married. Nothing says marriage better than going off on one of them Volvo things. Looks like an American truck. Maybe that's the sort of truck they use in the United States. And the battle itself as such, or the firefight I should say maybe, took place just behind where the Volvo is today. Now, as I come around here, passing this very nice looking camper van on the motorhome on the way, there you go, that's where I managed to park. The Americans, there were some Americans which were gathered here on the left in this area, and now the crossroads was here, so this is the Malmedy crossroads. It isn't Malmedy as such because it's but that's what it's called. And 4 roads, although one was slightly at an angle then. Now there's 3, but the 4th one is somewhere around. Well, it's over there, I think. And there was a cafe as well that one author referred to as a seedy cafe. A couple of Americans tried to hide in the cafe, and the SS burnt it down. And now, Peiper's men, probably a bit cheesed off already about the way things were going, that they weren't going fast enough, and so Peiper left. And then what we have here is the memorial to the massacre that took place. Now, is the reason we know it was a massacre. The other 2 things, the other 2 arguments, those arguments used in court are false. It's because many of the victims had gunshot wounds to the head at close range. Some of them had powder burns on them. Now, this area here was recaptured on the 14th of January 1945. They just left the bodies in the field. They weren't buried or anything. Obviously, they were quick moving, and so it didn't seem necessary. There were the Americans who'd hid and pretended to be dead. There were those that ran away. So we have here a little chapel, as you can see. And we have the names of those who were killed on this wall. I've got to say, I think this is a very nice monument. So, I mean, you see this all over Belgium and Luxembourg. You see how grateful the people are to the liberators. You see, to the memory of the soldiers of the United States Army who, while prisoners of war, were massacred by Nazi troops on this spot on the 17th of December 1944. And you've got in French as well, the mémoire des soldats de l'armée des États-Unis prisonniers de guerre massacrés par les troupes nazies en cet endroit le 17 décembre 1944. We here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That was the words of Lincoln. Okay, and here to the prisoners of war of overseas who liberated the East District and were victims of the Nazis' cruelty. And here we have something done locally with a peace symbol, and I think they're the names of the dead. Now, so this is the crossroads, and the Americans came down the road there, and they came along here in the direction of Saint-Vite. I'll just show you this as well. So the memorial of Baugnez. So this is the name of the place where we are right now. Built 1945, memory of sacrifice 87 American soldiers who were killed in cold blood by the Nazis on December 17th, 1944. And so it was really there very, very soon after the war that this was actually put up. So the convoy came down here. What we'll do is we'll walk a little bit down here and have a look at this. Now this morning I drove down this road, so I stayed at a place called Born, that's B-O-R-N, and then I came here, and so now I'm in transit between Heilbronn, where I work, or so I should say where my workplace is, because I normally work from a distance. I work in a van motorhome, and I'm usually in Poland, and so I'm heading now to the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham for an event, and I'm taking the opportunity to actually show you this. Now I came here this morning and there was something about the whole layout of the land that didn't suit me. It wasn't as I imagined it to be. Whilst walking down here, I'll actually say a few words about Peiper himself. So the strange thing about Peiper is the way he came from one of his older brother Horst was also a Nazi, but his eldest brother had mental problems. He attempted suicide, which left him I understand, in a vegetative state. Now, in 1942, he died of tuberculosis. Now, I haven't seen the death certificate, and I don't know where it was, but okay, Holocaust is my specialist area. I know quite a bit about the T4 program of murdering the mentally and physically challenged, and I'm suspicious that he might have been a victim of this, particularly given a cause like tuberculosis. He may have been murdered, in other words. Now, as for his next brother, Horst, he took part in the Polish campaign, and he died under suspicious circumstances in the summer of 1941 in Poland, and he was homosexual, and it's possible that he was murdered by other people in the SS. So I mean, I don't know that. I don't know the other one either. I'm just saying it as it was. I don't know. Now, Peiper, after the war, he's sentenced to death. He was released, and like many of them, and he worked as a translator as well as for a couple of vehicle companies. I think he worked for Volkswagen and can't remember, but anyway, he worked for a couple of companies, and so he worked things related to the war. He moved to France, and when I think it was Libération, the communist paper, published his address, and he sent his wife back to Germany, but anyway, his house burnt down. He was inside, but I think it's pretty obvious what happened. Again, I can't prove it, but I suspect some anciens résistants decided to resolve the problem. And certainly in France, I mean, I lived in France 10 years afterwards, but there was this thing with the people had been part of the anciens résistants, the resistance, and those that had collaborated to a lesser, greater degree part, and obviously anybody who'd been a resistance fighter during the war would be getting on a bit by 1976. But then again, at my age, I'm old enough now. I could have been a resistance fighter and to have taken part in the killing, if he was killed, of course, of Peiper, Joachim Peiper. And oh, look at that! There's a dead badger. You don't see many of them. Oh wow! Dead badger lying by the side of the road. presumably not having a sleep. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I know I often go off on a tangent with wildlife in my videos. Anyway, I think I'm still physically fit enough to have taken part in this attack on his house, if that is what happened. Anyway, so in fact, I'm now older than Peiper was when he died. So it was the firefight that I mentioned. It must have taken place somewhere over here in this area here, and so we can't really see a great deal now, but we have actually walked around, and the road be what, maybe 500 meters from the spot where I am right now. Bear in mind that obviously it's far more built up than it was then, and as you can see, this is a major road. It's got these nice cycle paths at either side. You've got lots of places also where you can stop en route, not so nice laybys. And obviously this is today's the 11th of October, so 11th of October 2025, and this is the wonderful colours of autumn that we have here. So I've now done my best to give you an explanation of what happened at this location on the 17th of December 1945. I'll now give you the postscript to what happened, which was that Peiper did advance a long way. He ended up being cut off. He lost 80% of his men and all of his equipment before being forced into an ignominious retreat on the 25th of December 1945. The whole thing of the Ardennes Offensive is totally ridiculous. Just think, if those tanks had been used on the open plains, kept in reserve somewhere in the area of Kielce, for example, they could have stopped the Soviets. But I think that Hitler wasn't interested in stopping the Soviets. What he wanted to do was more to allow the Soviets in. That's my theory anyway. More about that in a different video. So here, from Malmedy, from the Malmedy crossroads, or in Belgium. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you found it interesting. I upload every day at 2000 hours my time. I'm based in Poland and Germany. Okay, I'm in Belgium now, but normally in Poland and Germany. Find that interesting, please subscribe, and all the best. Bye for now.